I think, I mean, one of the main elements was about also in this report. I mean, there are questions that are quite complex in the way things interact at the regional and local scale. And I was wondering if Terry can spend a few words about how these issues at the local scale can be solved, or at least addressed, or at least in part, partially addressed by these large-scale cooperation or alliances in research and innovation, like the one you have been supporting over the years.
Thank you. If I may, I'm going to take a little side journey to talk a little bit about the history so people understand the context of where we are with this All-Atlantic agreement. Back in 2013, the Galway Statement on Atlantic Ocean Cooperation was signed, and between the European Union, Canada, and the United States. And while it wasn't limited just to the North Atlantic, most of the activities and most of the focus and engagement was there. It was in 2017, the EU, working with South Africa and Brazil, signed the Belém Statement on Atlantic Ocean Research and Innovation and Research Cooperation. And that moved forward, now bringing in the South Atlantic. And there was always the idea that we would somehow marry the two, both the North and South Atlantic efforts, into one. And so some of the projects like Mission Atlantic and others, you'll notice that there was even a deliberate effort by the EU to make sure that both North and South Atlantic partners were involved. And that was their goal or their vision as they were moving forward. And of course, the other partners bought in. Cabo Verde and Argentina and Morocco all showed interest after the Belém Statement was signed. And what they did, what the EU did, is they had implementing arrangements with them and to bring them kind of into the fold, if you will. And then all along, we were always talking about the All-Atlantic community. There were a number of forums that were held, this idea of an All-Atlantic research community. This was brought together on a number of forums until we came to the one in Washington in July. And on July 13th, there were 7 countries that came in and as signatories signed an Atlantic Ocean Research and Innovation Alliance Declaration, or All-Atlantic Declaration. So that brings us to a moment now where we've kind of said we have the Galway Statement, which doesn't go away, and we have the Belém Statement, but now we're trying to look at holistically from pole to pole at the Atlantic. And to not parse it up so much, but be able to have everybody who wants to be part of it contribute. Now, that doesn't mean just those 7 countries get to participate. It will be open to other participants, and there actually were 2 countries that showed great interest, actually maybe even you might say 3, Norway, Colombia, and the United Kingdom in joining the alliance as well, in joining this declaration, I should say. So how that will happen, whether they will get to sign the signatory as original signatories, or whether there'll be an addendum or letter, I can't say. But that will move forward. And so the idea is to keep it open so that other partners around the Atlantic can join this effort. Now, what does it mean to be part of it? It means that you want to work together to coordinate and to implement this idea of a co-designed, co-implemented effort. But each country has to decide, each member has to decide what it wants to put on the table, what it wants to do. There's no requirements. And we're at a critical point now because the advisory board for the All-Atlantic will now come together soon. I don't know the exact date, but they will meet, and those representatives will now start to talk about, well, how do we implement this new agreement? What legacy pieces of the Galway Statement and the Belém Statement will be part of this? What other activities that are ongoing right now in the Atlantic can be brought in? And what new activities do we want to bring to the table, both in the local, regional, and national, and basin scales? So this gets back to your question. How can everybody implement this? How can we look at things such as the blue economy at the multiple scales we've looked at today, from local to national to regional and beyond? that is something I think is going to be a very critical discussion for the board as they move forward. And there's going to be a need, a whole group of people, what I would call implementers. And that was where I fit when I was with NOAA for the United States, was working on the implementation part of the Galway statement. How do we actually put rubber to the road? How do we make this thing happen? And on the blue economy side, we did make some efforts, but I don't think we went far enough in the Galway statement. We focused primarily on blue technology, and we did make some good forays and inroads there. There was even some industry engagement in seabed mapping and the Atlantic Seabed Mapping International working with Fugro, which you probably remember seeing a slide there from an autonomous vessel from Fugro. But we need to do more, and we need to reach out to other sectors. We did engage with the aquaculture community and with the industry there. But I think we need to go beyond that. But what it will look like, I mean, this is a critical time. And these projects that you're all a part of, Mission Atlantic, iAtlantic, Atlantic Eco, and the list goes on, those projects are now in a critical place because there's significant funding and effort going into the Atlantic. And you have a chance to help shape, I think, what will happen. If you have advice and thoughts, that needs to come up. We shouldn't be waiting for everything to come down from on high. I think you at the level you're working with the regional scales, you can provide that input. And so some of this might be good to capture and provide it. What do you think? What would you like to advise the board to think and to do in terms of addressing some of the issues that you brought forward today? With that, I'll close.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this, let's say, advice in a sense. And in fact, the organization meeting like this was also going in that direction, provide a little bit of content on these alliances in terms of how to structure these research cooperations at local level and national level and basin scale level.